Thank you for joining me. I'm Crystal Lyons. Welcome to another broadcast of Cowgirl Logic. I just want to talk to you about America, and I believe what God is saying about America. Do you believe that God still talks to his people? I know that he does. He doesn't just speak to the prophets. He speaks to his family. God is a family man. He wants to speak to his family. And I don't consider myself a prophetess by any stretch of the imagination, but I do hear from God, because the Bible says that he tells his secrets to his friends, and that he says, I love this verse. I said, the good shepherd I'll follow, and a stranger I will not follow. And I have ears to hear. And so anyway, I began to ask the Lord about what he was saying about America, because you'll hear some of the prophets saying God is through with America because of our sin and all of that. Well, America's loaded with sin, that's for sure. But I just knew that wasn't God's plan for us. You got to think about this for a minute. Sodom and Gomorrah was absolutely horrible. And yet God would have spared all of those cities if there was just 10 righteous people in those cities. He would have spared them. How much more would God spare America for those who are righteous in America that is calling out to him to finish the call of God for us, for this nation? So anyway, back in 2016, I had some pretty cool encounters with the Lord concerning America. And before the election, the presidential election in 2016, I began to ask the Lord who was his man that he was calling to be president of the United States. Because, hey, I knew it wasn't Hillary. Don't get mad at the station. Get mad at me if you want to write ugly letters. Write them to me. I'll probably ignore them, but you can still write them and make you feel better. But everything listen, anytime there's a leader that everything they stand for is in direct opposition of what God stands for, then you can know that God is not going to put his blessing on that which opposes his own word, because he's not schizophrenic. So anyway, I went to the Lord and I asked him, who was his man for the hour. And I didn't know anything about Donald Trump. I'd never seen him on television, never read any of the gossip magazines about him, didn't know anything about him, didn't have an opinion one way or the other. I just knew he was a very wealthy businessman. And so I went to the Lord and I said, who is it? And the Lord said, Donald Trump is who I've chosen to be president of the United States. When I told my sons that, they were like, Mom. I mean, that was back when it looked like he could not beat Hillary at all. It actually, people thought it was a joke. And I said, I'm telling you, I've heard from God. And he said, Donald Trump is his choice. And I asked, he began to show me and I had a vision. But before that, the Lord spoke to me and said, and I love World War II history. And one of my heroes of World War II is, of course, General Patton. I mean, raw and rough around the edges and all, but he was a war strategist, a genius at that. And the Lord said, Trump will be like a political Patton, a political General Patton. He said his moves will be swift and uncalculated on their behalf. They won't know how to predict any of his moves, and thus they won't be able to control him. And he said, so he will be hated by the political machine that God was wanting to remove out of the earth. But I'll get to that here in a second. And he said they will hate him because they can't control him, and they're not going to know what he does next. And he said, I will use him to uproot. And that's when I saw a little vision. I saw a plow going deep into the ground. And you know how a plow can go in and it rolls the soil over. And it was ripping out roots. And he said, I will use him to uproot deep-rooted evil that's been controlling in our land for a long time. Well, I had no idea how deep rooted and how evil it was. But anyway, he said he will not only expose it, God said, I will use him to uproot it, to expose it, and it will be, justice will be brought. And we got to have justice, because the Bible says that the foundation of his throne is on truth and justice, and so justice has to come into our land for the kingdom of God to be able to rest in the earth. Justice has to be in the earth. So anyway, I knew then, and so I told my boys that, and the night that you know, the election showed that President Trump had won the presidency, my son called me and I said, well, how does crow taste? And he said, tastes pretty good. And I'm like, I told you what God said. You can't judge it by political wisdom. What is going on in the world now is going to defy logic. I don't mean just throw wisdom out the door, but I'm saying that God is going to do what is logically, seemingly impossible at times to get what God wants done. And so, so during that time, though, he also at that time when he was talking to me, in that little vision that I had, I saw a vision of America being split right down the middle. It was like a zipper unzipped America right down the middle, and I was like, oh, you know, that looked horrible. And the Lord said, no, it's good. It's good. He said there will be a great division in America, but he said it's needed, because he said I have to have that. Not I have to have that. That has to be done to pull out the cancer that of evil that is destroying this nation. And he said, just like a cancer patient has to be put on a table and they have to be opened up before you can remove that cancer, he said, America's going to be opened up and divided. But when I get the evil uprooted out of America, she will healed, come back together, and be stronger than ever before. And so I know that I've heard that from the Lord. And as time has gone since 2016, I'm seeing that what God showed me is, you see it coming to pass, and I'm understanding it even more now. Okay, so he promised me that this thing is going to end good, and that America is going to come back and not only just be in her former glory, but be better than ever before. And so I had this I had a dream. Well, I had a couple dreams I want to tell you about. And the reason why I'm saying this is because people have got in such fear over what has been going on in America. And I haven't had to deal with fear, not through the whole scandemic and all of that stuff. I haven't had to deal with any of that fear, because I didn't see that coming. The Lord didn't specifically say this is some of the stuff they're going to pull, but I just knew. He showed me that it would be a battle, and that it would be a confrontation, that America would be divided for a while. But in the process of that chaos, he was going to deal with deep-rooted evil and eradicate it out of the controlling aspect of our land. And we would come back together and be healed. So I had this dream that there was this long, and in my dream, it was, I got to tell you this. The dream was I was watching a television program that had already been videotaped. I mean, I was watching a video of a program on TV. So in other words, it wasn't live as I was watching it. It was something that had already sealed. This is the way it happened. And there was this long, dark room that it's crazy. I don't get all my dreams this way, but in this dream, it was being interpreted as I saw it. And that doesn't happen all the time. But this long, dark room, and I knew that it was the White House, and it was our Capitol building. And in this room, the controlling aspect in this room was a huge monstrosity of a king cobra. He stretched the whole end of the 30, 40-foot room up the wall on one side, and his head stuck out, you know, and he smugly was looking over the room. He was in control of it all. And so I knew that that was the political aspects that have been controlling our government for a long time. This snake was huge. It had grown for a long time. And it was in full and complete control with absolutely no fear of losing that control. And on the other end of the room was this mongoose, and it was just a normal sized mongoose. And you know how dreams are. All of a sudden, you know, in one split second, the mongoose was at the tail of the snake, and all of a sudden he grabbed that snake by the throat, and like a wild animal can do, I mean, he was thrashing that snake good, and I was like, yay, you know, go get him. And he let him go and jumped back to his place at the tail of that snake. But all of a sudden the snake retaliated and struck the mongoose. Well, you know, a snake strikes and lets go. But in my dream, that snake grabbed the mongoose by the throat, and his fangs sunk into, I knew the artery on the neck, and held on, which is not like natural for a snake, but it held on. And in my dream, because I hate snakes, and I don't want to see, I won't watch one of those animal programs that shows a snake killing something. I'm not going to watch it. And so anyway, in my dream, I turned it off, and I wished I would have watched the whole thing now, but I didn't. And I said, I ain't gonna watch that. I don't want to see that snake kill that mongoose. And the Lord's voice spoke in the dream, and he was laughing at me. He was chuckling, and he said, the snake doesn't kill the mongoose kills the snake. And I woke up, and I knew that I didn't tell you this, I knew that the mongoose was President Trump. And I should have known then that when the snake held on, that he was letting me know that this was going to be a long battle. This wasn't going to be a short fight. And so I when I woke up, in the dream, the Lord said, the mongoose is, what is that word? Where the venom of the snake, the mongoose is not affected by it. Oh, I can't think of that word. But anyway, you probably thought of it. Write me and tell me the word. Anyway, he said that the mongoose was not susceptible to the venom of the snake, and that he kills the snake. And so when I woke up, I was at a friend's place, and I told her the dream, and she said, well, let's ask Siri, because you know Siri knows everything. She's next to God. And so anyway, we typed it in, and it said, sure enough, that the mongoose was, what is that word, is non-affected, immune. Is immune? I don't think that's the right word. But anyway, the venom doesn't affect the mongoose. And that it went on to say, this is really demonic, you'd think, that the snake's venom paralyzes the muscles of its prey to where they're fully awake and alert and knowing what's happening to them, and they can't move. How wickedly cruel is that? And anyway, the mongoose is not affected by that. So anyway, that was pretty cool, and I knew the mongoose was President Trump. I should have known then that it was going to be a hairy battle and not one that ends quickly. It was going to be very vicious. Well, later on, I had this the dream that I had another dream. And I've always liked going into houses, you know. I've always liked that. I like going into houses and just seeing what they look like. I used to, because I lived back up to the National Forest in the Ozarks when I was a kid growing up. And so you'd find old cabins back in there, and I'd love to go in those old houses and explore. In my dream, I was on this real pretty piece of property, and there was woods around and all. It was real pretty. And there was this house sitting there, and I was standing there going, and it was empty. And I was like, man, I wish I could get in that house and check it out and just see what it looks like. And all of a sudden, some black SUVs pulled up, and President Trump got out. And next thing you know, I'm in the house with President Trump. And so I knew it was his house, and so that he had purchased it. And so I said, so are you gonna, the house, evidently, I forgot to say this, it was a very beautiful, well-built house, but it needed updating. And it really needed it needed some updating. And I said, are you going to remodel this house? And he said, no, I'm gonna tear it down and build fresh. And I'm like, oh. And so I said in the dream, oh, you didn't buy this piece of property for the house. You bought it for the love of this land. And I woke up and I knew then that President Trump did not step into the presidency for the office of the president itself, but he did it for the love of America. And I wondered what that meant when he said, I'm gonna tear it down and build fresh. Now I'm realizing, because I'm knowing more about the evil that has been absolutely ruling in our land and destroying it, and would eventually quickly actually bring us into like a third world country if somebody didn't step in and wipe out this all of the power of the old and bring us back to the original Constitution and the way God planned on our nation being set up. But I say all this to say that through all the times that the chaos, and I had no idea. I had no idea that it was going to be this long. Because when God speaks to you, a lot of times he'll tell you the end result, but he doesn't necessarily tell you the journey to that end result. But if you know the end result, that's why what book is it? I don't know. It's one of the epistles that says, do a good warfare with the prophetic word. You war with the prophetic word. In other words, what God said is going to come to pass, but you're going to walk through a time to where it looks like the absolute opposite is going to happen. And that's when you've got to believe God said such and such, and it will be so. And it's been so cool for me anyway, because I have never had any fear about our nation and what God was going to do. I know all of the chaos and the riots and the stupidity that is in the streets. It's like, all right, this is spring cleaning. He said he was going to expose the evil and uproot it, and then it was going to be dealt with. So we're in the process of the uprooting and the exposing, and the justice is coming. Also, the Lord said that he would use President Trump to do all of that. So I know that he's not through with President Trump, that he was to have that second term. And I didn't see that coming. I didn't see the undercurrent of all of the dishonesty and everything that's gone on to place a man in the office of presidency that God did not place there. But I never had any fear or any worry about it because of what God said. He has a method and a way that this is going to go. And he doesn't tell us all the ins and outs, but he told us. It's not so bad about seeing a fight if you already know the end result of that fight. And God is so good to tell us these things. America is going to come out stronger than ever before, and God is going to deal with the wickedness that has been ruling and absolutely controlling in our nation for decades, for just literally decades. So anyway, as God began to show me this stuff, and I began to know that God's hand was on President Trump, now I look back and I see, my gosh, I wished I'd have watched the show in the dream between the snake and the mongoose, because I would have seen more about, the drasticness of the battle that was going to go on. But I at least know that this thing is going to end well. This is going to end well. Now, that doesn't mean we sit on our blessed assurance and do nothing. It means that we pray, speak the word, agree with God, and all that, and use these things. I bet God has been telling you some things about America, and about our government, about our country, and you hold to that, and you share it, and you encourage others that are getting in fear and looking at what's happening around us and going, oh my, oh my, oh my, the sky is falling. No, it's not. Do you know this? The devil will always fight his hardest fights right at the gate where you're about to crash in and take this castle. I mean, take this stronghold and rip it apart. That's the most furious battle, is right there. And that is where we're at right now, is that we are in the midst of a furious battle. But God is and will prevail, and he will have his will in our land, and he is using imperfect people to do his work. And that's another thing. I tell you what, Christians especially, that have blasted President Trump because of his past. I mean, I don't want to be blasted for my past. How about you? How about you? How about you giving some grace that you like to have? You know, I like to have that grace. I don't want to be judged by my before Christ days or whatever, or even during all that stuff. And so, you know, oh, well, he's raw. Well, he's not polite. I didn't want a preacher for president. We didn't need a preacher for the presidency. We need a warrior, y'all. We need a warrior for the presidency. This thing, God knows how to use, how to raise up exactly what he needs. And in the Word of God, you see in the Word all the time that God uses people that you and I would not pick. He uses people that and he says that he uses the foolish things to confound the wise. He likes setting us up on our ear about some things, all right? But I'm telling you this, I want to encourage you that God is not through with America. He's got good things in store for America, and he is going to lead us through whatever chaos we've still got to walk through. It's going to end up blessing our land. Now, I saw this has nothing to do, well, it does kind of. I saw this, gosh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. It's weird. I was in Walmart and all of it, I call them bleeps. I have them every now and again. It's where you're just doing something and all of a sudden you see a little mini vision, like a little TV set went off in your mind, and you see I call it a bleep because it's a quick vision. And I was walking down one of the aisles in Walmart in this little town, Brady, Texas, and all of a sudden I saw the vision of those aisles being empty. Shelves were empty. There was no food there. And that was it. He hasn't, I didn't really, I haven't pressed him about it, and I should have. But now we're seeing, and if you haven't, you know, heard this here lately or anything, and again, this is, when I'm taping this, it's May 2022. It's not in the mainstream media because they don't want to tell you this stuff, but there have been, it's getting close to, the last count, 30, getting close to 30 places that had products, food, even chickens and things like that. These places are mysteriously burning down. And so we've been hearing for quite a while to make sure that you have some food stored up. And not just for you, but to give to your neighbors, because you know, I'll share with people and I'll say, hey, you know, we're liable to have some shortages coming up, and we ought to be wise and buy some things ahead and everything like that. But even no matter how much we buy, if we're going to share, we're going to need God to multiply this stuff. But if you give, it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, running over, the Bible says. And so I saw those empty shelves, and I didn't like the look of that at all. But I'm here to tell you, it would be wise to buy extra food, some things that, you know, like, you know, beans and rice and to potatoes. You can store potatoes back. Start a garden if you're in a position to where you've got some ground. I hate gardening, you know. But anyway, I mean, out here where I live, I already got a freezer full of deer meat because of all the hunters around here. So I've been blessed with that. But I'm seeking to get extra things and have it ready, because we're liable to go through some more rocky, tumultuous situations coming up. But I will tell you this, that God is going to bring righteousness back to our land, and he's going to prosper America. But before he can really prosper us the way that he would love to, he's going to have to deal with America's attitudes and everything else. And how he does all this, I don't know. But he's going to get it done. And his hand is on certain people to do the job that he has picked to get that job done. Now, I will say this. You know, a lot of times when we get a word, you know, it will look a certain way. But then when it comes to pass, it didn't, that word came to pass, but it didn't come like I thought it was going to come, ever. And like I said, I didn't think that it was going to be 2022, and we're still dealing with what I saw back in 2016, and it's not yet come to its fullness. But in just like this, in the book of Acts, there was some prophetic words spoken to the Apostle Paul, that they said, oh, we saw you in chains. If you go to Jerusalem, you're going to be put in chains. You're going to be hauled away. You're going to be locked up. Don't go. Don't go. You're not supposed to go to Jerusalem. And he said, I don't care if death faces me. I'm going to Jerusalem. Well, when it actually comes out, that word was true. That word was true. Paul did get arrested, put in chains, but it was actually for his good, because he was being there was lots of assassination attempts on Paul. I mean, he'd been stoned and left for dead, and all of this stuff. And it says later on, he says they gave him a house to live in, they gave him freedom to move around and friends to come and see him, and he was protected. And for over 2 years he was never assaulted, because he was protected under the Roman empire and situation there. So the word was absolutely accurate, but it looked totally negative, but it ended up being a positive thing. And it can be there can be have you noticed that God will speak a word to you about your future, and you tell you, oh man, you're called to do this, and you're going to travel the world, and you're going to speak to nations and kings and blah 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 blah, and it all sounds wonderful. But he doesn't tell you about the desert that you had to go through. He doesn't tell you about the opposition that you face and all of that. Just like when he spoke to Mary, and he said he prophesied over her what her son was, that he was Emmanuel, that the world would be blessed, that he was the savior of the world, and he would bring life and light and all this. And then all he says was, and your heart will be pierced also. That's a small little thing to give her a heads up on watching the crucifixion of your son. I mean, so God doesn't always tell us the middle steps of something, but he will tell us the end result. And God is not through with America. God is not through with our country. And I believe with all my heart that America will rise up and be more prosperous than ever before. We may go through some times of leanness in between, but we will see the hand of God finish this thing out, and God will bring America to the fullness of her calling and her destiny, because he has promised that. And let him, and this is, I gotta close, but on this one thing, keep your mouth shut against who God picks. It's not wise just because you don't like a person's personality. If God has picked that person, to sit in that position. You better honor what God has honored, and not badmouth it. And God has picked President Trump. God bless you. I hope that you join me again. Until next time, may the King rule and reign forever, almighty in your heart.